always takes a second to get used to the amplification. Thanks for coming. What I was going to talk about today, obviously I'm talking about Mastodons, and I'll talk about the experience I've had over the last year and a half working on the identification and recovery of a new Mastodon in Orange County, which has been an exciting singular experience for me. But as you know, as many of you know, but as you learn more about Mastodons in Orange County, it's sort of a run-of-the-mill experience at some level, because Orange County is basically lousy with Mastodons compared to the rest, of the country. So that's why I titled this talk, Another Orange County Mastodon. This one here is the Mastodon that we've got at SUNY Orange. And this Mastodon has been dubbed Sugar because of its discovery near Sugarloaf. This is not the main Mastodon I will be talking about. I will come back to Sugar later on, but we've got all of Sugar there, so it makes for a good slide. So what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about the larger context of ancient North America, ancient Orange County, and then go through the process of, or tell the story of how this new Mastodon was discovered, the work we put into it to recover it, the ongoing research on the Mastodon, and the opportunities that we've been able to have students involved, and just kind of, to me, it's this great story of cooperation and institutional connections. So I'm going to kind of highlight a lot of that. And then at the end, we will definitely have time for questions, if you have them. So as I think is becoming much more well known, a couple months ago, the Indy had a piece about, the importance of Mastodons and kind of American colonial history and the emergence of the United States as a nation state. And I won't go too much further into this because there's going to be a talk in 2 weeks that's going to dive more into kind of the history of Mastodon finds at that time, which I think you all have flyers for at this point. One thing that I do really love, though, is how Mastodons figured so prominently in kind of early American, propaganda ideologies. How this is a piece from Jefferson's Notes on the State of Virginia, where he was trying to counter popular ideas that European animals were bigger, stronger, more robust, and that anything in the Americas would start to degenerate. It was a very influential idea coming from a naturalist in Europe, and folks in the United States wanted to push back. No, our animals are good too. And so this is just a little snippet of comparisons of just the weight, of animals in the Americas versus Europe. So obviously, remains of big animals are important for that. And also too, interestingly, now we all are well aware that extinction happens, unfortunately. But at the time, the notion of extinction wasn't necessarily accepted. So finding fossil remains of big animals, the assumption was those animals were still around. And so if we find these remains of a big animal in, the early 1700s, that's proof that American animals are big too. So I will move on. This is over here the first illustration attempted of a mammoth or mastodon. It's not quite on the mark, but I kind of like the imagery here. So here's a map that includes, it's an attempt to show where mastodons have been found in New York State. This doesn't mean full mastodons in each of these locations, but at least parts of mastodons in these locations. And the thing that is obvious here is that Orange County it's an unusually dense, concentration of mastodon finds. So it really is part of Orange County heritage for sure. It's an important part of our history. And so, what this recent project I've been involved in is just a continuation of that, trying to learn more and kind of engage with our history a little bit more. So, as I'll just quickly mention, our recent Mastodon is not the only one found in the last 25 years or so. Here's just a sampling of recent mastodon finds. This one is the most recent one, also kind of nearby on Bowser Road in Middletown. Mastodon found through some agricultural activity, and then some excavations happened. These are some tusks found in the Tonkamoose Creek, kind of eroding out of the edge of that creek. They found 2 tusks, nothing else. It's kind of interesting that just the 2 tusks. And this is in Orange County. This is over in Hyde Park, but a pretty spectacular mastodon find that was found in a homeowner's pond, where they're dredging the pond, and the dredger found a femur. I think they put it up against a tree. They didn't know what they had, and then the homeowner's like, "What's that?" And then that kind of led to a really fascinating story about the excavation of that. So, hold on. And now just quick drink, and then we'll go into the basic context of the environments of these mastodons. So, where we're going to go back in time here is a geological epoch that we call the Pleistocene, or more famously, kind of the Ice Ages. So, a very different environmental conditions were apparent throughout the globe, but definitely in Orange County. And kind of most notably, and because of this talk, the Pleistocene is characterized by what we term megafauna, fancy word for saying big animals. And mastodons were one of those big animals. But so I want to go through and talk a little bit about the environments that they were living in. And the thing that I really want to emphasize here too is that, this is why I never loved the term the Ice Age, because it gives the impression that it's a consistent, over time it's just ice, But the Pleistocene was one of change, where you had glaciers coming down, glaciers, retreating back up. And so pulses of change happening. So what we're going to be looking at is how, that most recent pulse of change happened, and how the plants and animals were in, our part of the world at that time. So here's just a quick graph describing what I just tried to show. This is showing average, roughly, what it's depicting for our purposes is average temperature over time. So it gets warmer, it gets colder, warmer, colder. So glaciers advance in these colder periods, they retreat in these warmer periods. And so what we're going to be looking at is this most recent, it's thousands of years ago down here. So 100,000 years ago, there had been a warming period, but then we got cold, cold, cold. And then about roughly 20,000 years ago is the period that's termed the last glacial maximum, which that just refers to the most recent time the glaciers advanced to their most extreme, position. So it's since this time, since the last glacial maximum, that most of our evidence for Pleistocene animals in New York comes from. Not all of it, but most of it comes from after that period. And here's a map, obviously, showing an estimate of where the glaciers had advanced to during the last glacial maximum. So we're here, obviously, and almost all of New York was covered in glaciers at that time, including where we're at. There's a little snippet down here that seems to have not been covered. And then as many of you I'm sure know, Long Island is kind of the rubbly residue of glaciers pushing rocks forward and then retreating. Here's just kind of a cool graphic showing, to give you some sense of how thick, the glaciers were in this part, at this time, just comparing the thickness of the glaciers with contemporary skylines. So my hunch is we're somewhere, in kind of that area. So obviously a very, very different environment. Quick side story that this always reminds me of. As I'll talk about in a little bit, when the mastodon that I'm involved with was first publicized, I got a lot of emails from people who read the news stories. And there was this one guy who wrote me, and he was I forget where, but he was at a teaching hospital, He, was a resident, or I forget the hierarchy at teaching hospitals. So he was the professor there, So he was a really smart guy, but he wrote me this question of, okay, you're finding mastodons, but there were glaciers everywhere. Are they like under the glaciers? Are they top of the glaciers? And I have to say, like, it was at some level, it was a question coming from ignorance, but he was totally, like, not ignorance in a bad way, just ignorance and I didn't know it. And he asked, and so there was no, I just liked that he was confident in his ignorance, because too often we try to create this impression that we know more than we do. But I just thought that was kind of a fun aspect of somebody reaching out to learn a little bit more, even though they were a very accomplished person, in their own field. Okay, the next this slide is going to show the kinds of environments that started to appear in New York State once the glacier did start retreating after the last glacial maximum. So so what we've got here is the earliest, next, and then the most recent right here. So this would be when the glacier was, covering most of New York. Then it starts to retreat as the earth warms. And the first environments that start to colonize New York are kind of tundra-y environments, which makes sense because in the Arctic today, those are the kind of environments we've got. And then as time goes on, you start getting boreal forests, which are basically pine forests, becoming the next, botanical regime that colonizes New York. And then time continues to go on to where we've got roughly, basically what we've got today, the kinds of deciduous, mixed forests that we have today. So there was a process of glaciers retreating and the new environments colonizing those opened up spaces. So this is showing the plants that were colonizing those areas, but animals were following, of course, and a part of that movement into this part of the world. And so here's I think a really cool illustration of some of the first, faunal colonists of this part of the world. And so it seems like when the tundra environments moved north, the first animals that moved north were like, caribou, mammoths, and we'll talk about mammoths versus mastodons in a second because they're different, mammoths and like muskox. That those were some of the first to move into this, into these newly opened up glacier-free environments. As time moved on, we get those boreal forests, those pine forests coming in. And these are just showing some, I'm not going to talk about these ones, but some of them are just cool. Animals that are extinct today that have been found in Orange County, their remains have been found in Orange County. Giant sloths, giant beavers, and a kind of indigenous wild pig that its cousins are still living in parts of the American Southwest and Mexico, javelinas. They're still around, but we had indigenous pigs in this part of the world as well. They've all gone extinct, obviously, at this point. But then we had mastodons as well. And as we saw from that earlier slide, we had a lot of mastodons in Orange County. And a question that I'm sure is already popping in your head, why does Orange County have so many mastodons? And part of the reason is just it became a very attractive environment for mastodons. As the glaciers retreated, it created kind of the black dirt is a product of this. A glacial kind of swamp is developing, and you got all these trees here, so you got all this organic material, and so lots of animals are attracted to it. As we'll see later, lots of little glacial, not so little, but glacial lakes and ponds are developing. Animals are coming to feed and drink near them. Those mastodons that happen to die in those ponds at the edges are more likely to get preserved. And then we've got just the history of Orange County and agricultural activities, which are or create opportunities for people to discover, these mastodons. So yeah, Orange County was a very attractive environment for these creatures. This is, I think, a pretty good illustration of what mastodons looked like and what the environment, looked like. Like the site that I'm going to talk about and show you slides of in a little bit, I think looked very much like this, back when it was, when our mastodon lived and died there. A quick comparison of some of the Ice Age elephants that were around the globe, but of course here too. So what we're dealing with are mastodons. It's this little guy compared to the others. Mastodons are not mammoths. They're a cousin of mammoths. They tended to be a little shorter, squatter, mammoths had kind of this big domed skull. We had a bit flatter skull with mastodons. But the thing that, I'll come back to that. The thing that really stands out between mastodons and mammoths are their teeth. This is a mammoth tooth, which is much more like an elephant tooth. This is a mastodon tooth, which it's massive, but it's actually kind of more similar to our molars than an elephant molar. So it's an interesting difference. But these are two of the teeth of these two elephants are the clearest evidence that you're dealing with two different species here. If you just find, as those folks in Hyde Park did, like the femur of a mastodon or a mammoth, it's hard to necessarily assign it to which species or not. They're very similar. The teeth are not similar. The teeth are abundantly clear. Like you all now absolutely know the difference between mammoth and mastodon teeth. You definitely do. This does not take a ton of expertise to note the difference here. This is just showing the relationships between elephants, both ancient and living. And something that I always found interesting when I first, and I still do, but I found it surprising and interesting when I first learned it, is that mammoths are more closely related to living Asian elephants than either are to living African elephants. So, you can think of it, mammoths are sort of sibling species to living Asian elephants, but cousin species to living African elephants. And then we've got our friend here, our mastodon, which is a pretty distant cousin. The relationship goes back pretty far in time. Tens of millions of years ago, it's estimated that the lines that led to mammoths and elephants on one hand and mastodons on the other split. So pretty elephants, but distant cousin elephants. Okay, so that's a little bit of the background, just kind of a very general intro level background about the Pleistocene and mastodons and their kind of role in it. Parts of that are going to come back into our story, for sure, as we talk. But what I was going to shift gears into now is, over the last year and a half, how I got involved with this new project, again, recovering a mastodon. And real quickly, Bill mentioned, I teach anthropology at the college. Part of anthropology in the United States includes archaeology. And archaeology is the study of ancient humans and the material remains that they leave behind. That's how we study ancient humans, is doing that. One of the archaeologists often have a chip on their shoulder because everybody assumes they dig dinosaurs. And we don't dig dinosaurs, because that's paleontology. So it's like I've spent my career like, no, we don't dig dinosaurs, that's paleontology. But then, as we're going to find here, I'm talking about paleontology today. I'm not talking about dinosaurs, but I am talking about paleontology. So I got involved because of my role at the college and my experience doing archaeological excavation, but so far we have found no archaeology at this site. We have found no remains of humans or human artifacts or human modifications of this mastodon. So far, we're dealing with straight up paleontology. This is just like back when I was in Arizona doing some excavations, showing some of that. I have done some archaeology around here, like some historic homesteads. These are some students of mine from like 10 years ago. But so I've been at the college, I've been, again, teaching anthropology and archaeology, and I was definitely aware of the importance of mastodons in the county. We have the mastodon in our building at SUNY Orange. But I didn't expect to run into a mastodon or be a part of this kind of thing. So there was, it was fall of 2024, and I was between classes. I was in my office, and a colleague of mine from and you'll see him later, but a geologist, came into my office with some people, and they had a box. And a story I've told a million times now, but when you teach archaeology or geology, people will bring you boxes. And they'll show you stuff, and very often it's a weird rock, you know, that kind of looks like something, and you have to disappoint them. And the people are, I mean, you feel terrible because people are just interested, understandably. You know, and they're eager. They want to find something interesting and new, and you have some weird rock. So, but this box had these in them, which were absolutely not weird rocks. These were absolutely, I mean, and the landowners definitely knew they had something special too. They just wanted to connect with people about them. You know, so they had found these two molars. So these are each two different teeth, big, you know, so you see the scale of it. They have, you know, ridges going across here, but two different teeth that they had recovered and brought into the college. And again, they wanted to know about them more. You know, in some of the press that came out, there was a headline, they thought it was a baseball. And I have to say, just because I like these people a lot, they knew this wasn't a baseball. They thought it was a baseball from like, you know, 50 yards away when it's kind of under a bush. You know, and they just saw some white showing up under a bush. So I just have to give that credit. They knew it wasn't a baseball. But they were, he was just out doing yard work. You know, and they've got a pretty big backyard. They've been slowly over the years clearing out kind of brush and stuff. And he was out doing yard work, and these two teeth were on the surface of the yard, which is really weird and really unusual for mastodon remains. As you'll see slides of it, but this mastodon, as far as I know, has the title of shallowest mastodon found in New York. You know, most of them have been found at deeper depths. And this one, like, these teeth, the grass was growing under the teeth. You know, so there was a chance that these teeth got deposited here in a different way. Like that the mastodon died and then their bones got all jumbled up and got moved around to more contemporary activities. So at this point, we still don't know if there's more mastodon out there. So they came in, what do we do with this? And like I just said earlier, well, I'm not exactly sure. So I reached out to the New York State Museum, and this is a weird angle, but this is Robert Faranek. He's the vertebrate paleontologist at the New York State Museum. So I reached out to him. I'd never met him before, but I reached out to him and I sent him an email that said mastodon teeth on the subject line and that picture. And he now tells the story that he saw my email that said mastodon teeth, and he starts preparing, thank you for your interest, da, 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 da. Yeah. Those are just weird rocks, you know, because he had the same experience. But he saw the image, and it was clear that these are absolutely mastodon teeth. So he arranged, him and another staff member from the museum came down to the property owner's property that next week, because the homeowners had said, and we do think there's more in the ground. And so we started brushing around in the ground. And this is, I mean, you can see grass, so you were definitely at the surface, just brushing around a little, and another tooth is emerging. So those teeth that were found on the surface, we know, okay, there's a little bit more to the story than just that there are teeth still embedded in the ground. And as we just kind of brushed around with the fingers and tried to wiggle it, it didn't wiggle, which meant it was kind of embedded in something more than soil. So we had a good indication that there was more here than just a few random teeth. There was another tooth, it's hard to see, but this is the ridge of a second tooth. So just from brushing with fingers, we could see that there were 2 teeth still in the ground. So now that's a total of 4 teeth, from this property owner's backyard. This was October, so because those teeth were so close to the surface, the thought was, let's try to extract them before another winter. I mean, granted, it's been there for millennia, but we now know that it's there to recover it for the next, just to kind of protect it. So we just did a targeted excavation, 1 test unit, to try to find the rest of what the teeth were embedded in, uncover the teeth, but what the rest of it was embedded in. And so this here is that excavation unit. It's 1 by 1 meter, which is roughly a yard, on each side. And you can see the teeth there, which is just amazing to me still how just pristine looking they are, just sitting there. But we excavated it. We're screening just to see if there's stuff we're missing as we're excavating it, so you've got it there. This is a shot of a closer up shot of the excavation unit. So these are our teeth that were poking through the surface. This isn't as clear, but underneath it, this is bone. It is not dirt, it's just bone that's got a lot of dirt in it. But the jaw was there. Most of the jaw is there. A lot of it was fragmented, especially the parts that kind of, if you know your jaw, your mandible, there's kind of this part that goes up here, same with mastodons. That was pretty fragmented. So we found the whole jaw there. Again, that's more evidence that this isn't just a jumble, of random bones. But this is us recovering that jaw to take to the New York State Museum. Once they got it to the museum, they were going through some more of the stuff we got out of the screen and other items. So a lot of it was fragments, as you can kind of see here. That's one of the halves of the jaw there. But in some of the smaller pieces of bone, we also found here's a toe bone of the mastodon. This is a reference piece from the museum. And this is the end of a rib. So in and of them, I mean, whatever, it's exciting, but in and of themselves, they're not all that exciting, but that they're found with the mastodon jaw. Again, this is giving us more indication that we got more than just some isolated finds here. So that's where we were at, excuse me, in kind of late 2024. The New York State Museum put out a press release in December 2024, and this is just whatever, because I'm a bit of a, I guess, country bumpkin, because I'm not used to this kind of thing. It got a lot of media attention, a surprising amount of media attention. Even the New York State Museum people were like, oh my gosh. This was just a quick Google search of Scotchtown Mastodon. And there were news stories. Part of it's just our internet news ecosystem of just algorithms pulling stuff from clickbait. But we were contacted by whatever my biggest get was being interviewed in the New York Times. But so it was an interesting news story. This, again, the homeowner finding the random tooth in the yard, that was the hook. But we did get again, an extraordinary amount of attention for this kind of find. So it was a very interesting couple days as we were all I never get the communications officer from my college coaching me about what to say. But I did that day, or those couple of days. So we got a lot of attention, and there was a couple really great results from this. I mean, not just the attention, but we did this initial work, and this was, as you can see, it was a small group of us. I mean, that's me, that's Bob from the paleontologist, this is an archaeologist from the New York State Museum, and so it was a small crew. We couldn't get that much done that quickly, but in conversations between them, this New York State Museum, and the homeowners, we kind of came to the conclusion that, well, wouldn't it be great if we could look for more, but get students involved to provide the kind of educational opportunity to do this to local, SUNY Orange students. And so that was the result, is that we were able to plan out and conduct this past summer, and that's what you'll see a lot of slides of in a second, a field class for looking for more of this Mastodon. So we were able to take 12 students, we worked for 6 weeks in this backyard to look for more, and we did absolutely find more of this Mastodon. So it was, again, like, it's so unusual definitely to be able to tell students, you will find a Mastodon. You will absolutely find a Mastodon. That's incredibly rare. I never thought I'd be able to say that, but I can say it with confidence. And then I'll come back to this logo later, but because of the prevalence of Mastodons in Orange County, I've long thought that the mascot for at least SUNY Orange should be a Mastodon. It's still a cult. It's probably going to remain a cult. But we have at least got a sub-mascot now. And at the end of the talk, we do have SUNY Orange merch with this. I don't have it with me, but you can order it with this image. And this was another neat thing. Like, we did a contest in some of our, I forget the class, but in our art department. A contest where students created a range of these logos. And this was the one that was selected as the winner. So it was, again, we had students interested in paleontology and archaeology involved, but also some students doing, graphic design involved. So it was, I was happy to be able to do that too. Just a quick mention, while archaeologists don't dig dinosaurs, archaeologists do definitely sometimes dig mastodons, because mastodons and people did overlap. Right now it looks like in New York we overlap for maybe millennia to 500 years. So people and mastodons, and definitely in other parts of the country, the continent for sure. But in New York State, probably there's a window, and there's evidence of it for sure. That we interacted, or that humans interacted with them. And this is just showing a map of some of the earliest archaeological sites in the Wallkill Valley. So you can see, it was kind of a hot spot for people as well. So we're always on the lookout for that. At this Mastodon site, so far, no archaeology. So we don't have any kind of further archaeology there, but as you know, if you came to Barry Cass's talk last year, the Duchess Cory Cave site is a really, really important ancient site in New York, or in Orange County, but we've got even more here as well. Okay, so now I was going to go through and talk a little bit about the projects that we did, how we got the students involved, what they did, what they got to do. Oh, and I'll say this again too. I have to give such credit to the homeowners. They didn't have to do this. They didn't have to contact us. They could have kept those teeth. They could have kept them in their garage. They could have put them on eBay. They could have done all of that. They're the homeowners. It's their property. Sometimes people have the misconception, like the state will send in black helicopters and start excavating your backyard. That's not going to happen. It's all up to them. They can shut this down at any point. But they've been incredibly, generous with their time. They let this, bunch of hooligans come to their backyard day after day. So they were extreme. I give them all the credit in the world. But we would meet at the Middletown campus, we'd load up in a van, we'd go to their house. This is the group of them out at the site. Oh, and I think, now I'm remembering how I did the slideshow this time. A class like this is really fun to teach as a teacher, because often you're in a classroom, and being in the classroom's awesome too, but you don't have the same kind of relationships and kind of connection with the students. And I got very definitive proof the students got really into this project, because, and I don't have the 3 students got tattoos connected to this project. So, I mean, I've definitely never had that as an instructor. If people getting tattoos based on a class that I've engaged in.
Scary.
Here's the excavation units we opened up. I'll show some more of this so you get the context of it. It's unfortunate that the academic schedule doesn't line up with the scheduled rain in Orange County, because we were digging in June, and June was rough as far as rain. So we got a lot of plywood to try to stabilize the surfaces we're excavating and standing on. But we opened up several units. We've got some screening stations around. We were going, slow and steady. You didn't want to disturb the Mastodon remains until they're photographed and mapped in place, and you can recover them without damaging them. So using traditional archaeological methods, laying out units, scraping back very slowly and surely, measuring depths, mapping it, all that kind of stuff. Here it's hard to see, but we've got some Mastodon coming out here. Something I hadn't done before in my archaeological experience. Usually I'm using either a shovel or a trowel to excavate. We were using spoons and chopsticks on this one to try to really be careful with the Mastodon remains. Here we've got one of the screening stations. Again, because you want to find if you're missing anything, particularly if there's archaeological material or artifacts left behind. This is that earlier famous Charles Wilson Peale painting of the exhumation of the Mastodon. And when I first saw this painting, it was before this project, and I hadn't really put 2 and 2 together about, they're bailing water out of the excavation units. And then we spent quite a bit of time bailing water out of the excavation units. There were some mornings where that was the first 20 minutes, just getting the water out of it, because Mastodons tended to die in places that were, low and wet places, so those places are still going to gather water today. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the new parts of the Mastodon we found in this part of the field class. This is just a quick map of the excavation units we opened. This is one of those excavation units. This is a picture of some of the stuff we found, but number 1 is where the jaw was found originally, just to kind of follow. So now we're looking at 2, 3, and 5, the excavation units, and we found at least, significant parts of 10 more vertebrae. Here, you can kind of see them lined up. So we found those and recovered those. Now we're moving up to here. So the jaw was there, here. We found 2 ribs. And this is the atlas vertebra, which is the vertebra right behind the skull, right there. So we found that one. Here's just a closer up shot of it, there. And that's what we found during this part of those are the things that our field class was able to identify and recover. We did find definitely hints of more, but we didn't have time to do it right. So we filled the holes back in, and hopefully this summer we will go back to those spots to identify those parts of it. Here's a composite of all of them. This is the field, a field map. Here's me just putting pictures together to try to show it, where we had the jaw here, jaw there, vertebra here, rib, atlas vertebra, ribs, atlas vertebra there. So we found some significant more, of this Mastodon. Everybody wants to find the tusks. We have not found tusks yet, because those provide a lot of information about the life history of Mastodons. So that would be excellent to be able to find. This is just showing how we're documenting some of it in the field. We're doing field maps, kind of real traditional field maps. One other thing, I won't belabor this too much, but I was very excited with this because I hadn't done this. We were also able to do 3D scans in the field of these pieces. So, before we even recovered it, we're able to, get a good, again, 3D map of these pieces. And it's not perfect, but it actually works pretty well in the sense you just take your iPhone and go around it several times, and it gets pretty good measures. You can then measure on the, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not showing it. Huh. I don't know. This isn't a huge deal.
Is this a separate?
It's a separate tab. It opened up into a. Okay, it's not a huge deal.
Okay.
But you all are missing out. What I'm looking at is just incredible.
It's a teaser.
No, but what it is like a 3D map of you can move it around and manipulate it, and you can move around, that vertebra, and then you can measure it on the application, and the measures are accurate to what was done in the field. Okay, hold on, I gotta get it back. Okay. Then after we documented everything in place, we did recover, these materials to send to the New York State Museum. This is that atlas vertebra. Here we've got our ribs. This is one of the ribs being recovered. Some of them, like this atlas, was in pretty good shape. It wasn't that fragmented, so we're able to just kind of wrap it in aluminum foil, undermine it, flip it over, and recover it. These ribs, we put we did the foil, but then put plaster field jackets on them to try to keep them, intact and in place. And we definitely had to plaster field jackets these vertebrae that were over there. They had a lot of fragmentation to them. One of the other really great things about this field class, though, is we did the excavation, we did the paleontology with archaeological methods, but I was working with a colleague, Anthony Soricelli, who's a geologist at the college, and he was able to lead the students in doing geological testing around the site, which I've done archaeological field classes. I've been a student in them, I've been a assistant in them, I've been an instructor in them. I have never done one that had that kind of more of a robust geology aspect to it too, which was really, really neat. So Anthony was doing soil borings across the site to try to reconstruct the geological layers or the stratigraphy to help reconstruct what the ancient environment looked like when these mastodons were there. So this was the basic sequence he was finding. This would be the top level, the kind of wetland peat that we had there. Then there's this level here known as marl, which is where you find mastodons typically. That's kind of the place mastodons live and die in. And then this is the clay that's down at the bottom. Because what we were, come back to that. This doesn't show up so well. This is not a map of what we found. I'm just using it for illustration to pull out. But what we think we were in, the geology is suggesting we were at the edge of a glacial pond or lake. Because as the glaciers are retreating, that water's flowing out. And it's catching in lowland places and basins. And so, in a lake bed, the first thing that kind of deposits at the bottom is a bunch of clay. That'd actually be down there. Bunch of clay. Then as there's biological life in the lake, those dead organisms fall down and create new layers. So we were finding evidence of that, of ancient kind of pond lake beds, which again is where you typically find these preserved mastodons. In addition to Anthony's work, we had the glacial geologist from New York State Museum come down and work with the students as well. And here he is, Andy Kozlowski. He's got this much deeper corer to take deeper samples of the geology. And here the students are pushing them down, pushing it down further. So we were going a couple meters deep, so a couple of yards deep. And here's the the cores that were being pulled out. So just to give you some understanding, this is all the same core. So like they push it all the way down and then they pull it back up. And so then you break it into pieces. This is the ground surface there. And then this is that dark, rich, organic peat soil. Go down here. That would connect with that. And that would connect with that. That would connect with that. So all a single column. And like you see this beautiful gray clay down at the bottom that was left, you know, as the glacial lake was initially forming. And then as you move up, you get some of the more organic-y, remains of organic-y material that deposited as, again, life was living in those ponds and lakes. So I'm going to come back to some of those geology pieces in a second. The material that we recovered then got sent to the New York State Museum because, and I mean, I think it's like this great win-win situation because at SUNY Orange, I don't have the means to do justice to this material. I don't have the space. I don't have the resources. I don't have his expertise. You know, so Bob is spending time trying to piece all of this stuff back together. Understand what's going on with it. So the New York State Museum gets to be our lab, which is a great, you know, resource and partner to have in this situation. So they're currently, you know, working on all that stuff. And another thing the students got to do, our students, is we took them up and we got the backstage tour of all the, you know, collections of the New York State Museum. So it was a fun way to kind of wrap up our field class. So, but another really neat thing about having the New York State Museum with us is more detailed analysis that they're being able to do in the lab. So what this is showing you is the geologist starts looking for evidence of ancient life, you know, like plant fossils in these different columns. And he was able to extract, through this kind of complex back and forth sequence of like getting the sediment, freezing it, warming it, freezing it, warming it, putting different chemicals on it, and then extracting. He was able to extract these plant macrofossils he was able to identify it as a kind of tundra plant. So this would have been before the Mastodons were there. You know, because remember, the tundra colonized probably before the Mastodons. And so he's able to identify these tundra plants, which that in and of itself is really cool, really interesting and awesome. But, and actually let me step back. One of the things that definitely they attempted with the Mastodon remains was we do want to know how old they are. And one of the things you do, because the Mastodon was a once living thing, you can do radiocarbon dating on it. Our Mastodon did not have enough collagen left behind to get a radiocarbon date. So probably because it was so high, you know, that's the current thinking, so high in this, it just degraded, you know, it wasn't preserved. But these guys could be radiocarbon dated. So radiocarbon dates did come back from these older plants, and they showed that like at 2 meters down, they're dating to roughly 18,000 years ago. And at 1.5 meters down, roughly 15,500 years ago. So we know our Mastodon we know the Mastodon is coming from layers that are above this one. So our Mastodon is younger than 15,500 years ago, which is what was expected. But that's, you know, getting more evidence is more positive data, just helps us fill out our record, you know, our understanding of ancient Orange County. Most Mastodons in Orange County roughly right now date to like 13 to 14,000 years ago. So this is putting our new Mastodon right in that kind of sweet spot as well. But that stuff's ongoing. This is the students at the New York State Museum. I'm trying to think, what did I have to, okay. So that's, I'm almost done. But what I've got one more thing to say about our other mastodon, and then I can open it up to questions. Sugar is our SUNY Orange mastodon, and currently, partly as the result of this new interest in mastodons at the college, as this project has unfolded, is the college really wants to move Sugar to a better spot because at the college. It's okay. Yeah. So, thank you. I liked that. No, but at the college, because there's a better spot in one of the newer buildings that was actually basically designed to house Sugar more, along more contemporary standards. Because if you've seen Sugar, you can go by. I mean, this is a stairwell, and it's just open. Unfortunately, there's quite a bit of dust on Sugar. Sugar was mounted in the early 70s using techniques and approaches that are not up to contemporary standards. Sugar could use some care, some kind of new maintenance, and then be moved to another building at the college. Still on display, that's the goal. But doing this is insanely expensive to do it right. It's definitely more than just getting a bunch of students together. Let's unscrew it and let's take it over there. It's a lot more complicated than that. So we are raising funds. We're trying to raise funds for this. And so this is our merch. We took the field classes logo, put Sugar on it. But you can purchase this t-shirt. This is the QR code. If you're not a QR code person, I'm gonna send Bill the link and he'll disseminate it out to the Friends of the Library, Goshen Library listserv. So you can, I think they're $25. And they're, the fundraising goes to a good cause to try to get Sugar over to a better spot for Sugar. Yeah.
You should contact the Smithsonian because when they brought the Peel Mastodon here from Germany, they knew how to take it apart and put it back together.
No, we're contacting people, and it's the quote we're seeing.
Perhaps the Smithsonian would.
Yeah.
Just do it. Who knows?
Yeah, that would be. I mean, I'm not involved with that part of it, but I know they've reached out to several different entities, and it's just so far expensive.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
How much?
Millions.
It's not quite millions, it's under, but not a far under. Yeah.
What building do they want to move her to?
It's the Raleigh Center for Science and Engineering. It's the newest building on the Middletown campus.
Where is she now?
In the biotech building.
Oh, okay. I wander my way through Raleigh half the time, so because I go there now.
So if you're familiar with Raleigh, like in the downstairs where there's that cafe.
Yeah.
Over there you can see some glass cases.
Yeah.
Over there. So it would be a better spot. Yeah.
Has there been any communication with the county legislature about closing some of that funding gap to be able to move her?
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Okay.
There's an administrator who's kind of taking the lead on this. But yeah, I can't answer that definitively.
Is Sugar a he or a she?
Sugar's a he. Sugar's been sexed as a he, but the name Sugar, we usually feminize that name, so Sugar is a he. Yeah.
If you found the tusks, what's the most exciting thing that you could retrieve from that information that would help?
Yeah, tusks, I guess some of this, and again, a lot of this I didn't know 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I've gotten a crash course in mastodons for sure. But tusks, if you look at the cross-section of them, they're like tree rings. And so the mastodons are adding one each year. You can see things like nutritional stresses and growth.
Very much like a tree.
Yeah, and apparently you can actually see interbirth intervals for female mastodons because you can see the stresses from nursing. And so they've been able to try to reconstruct like how often, a given female gave birth. Which if you had enough of that, then you could get averages of how often mastodons gave birth, which that's
And
amazing.
the population in the area.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that's really cool. Thank you.
absolutely. Hold on, you, and then you.
That map you showed about how many in the world was pretty stark. Give me a number. How many in Orange County versus the rest of the state, if you had to guess?
I mean, the estimates, and these are general estimates, because some of the mastodons, it's like, there's the material that's in collections that's been documented, and then there's sometimes, well, you know, that guy, I talked to him once, and sometimes it's hard to parse between those. But the estimates I've heard is in the state, it's around 150, and Orange County is like a third to half of that. So just a relative estimate. Yeah.
How old is sugar?
How old is sugar? The most recent dates, because sugar's been recently redated, and I want to say 13,900 years ago.
You know, how old was he when?
Oh, how old was he? Oh, okay, okay.
Sorry.
You know, I think, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm guessing 30s. You know?
Do you know how long they lived?
You know, most of them are thinking like 30s to 60s if they didn't die earlier.
Well, I was just wondering, did they kind of like get stuck here in all the muck? And that's
When they
why
died?
they were dying? Or did they just die because the foliage was bad?
I mean, there's a couple things there, because why did they all die out? You know, and that probably has to do with, there's climate change, but also if people are up here, that's not a good recipe for big animals to survive. So that's one question. But then there's how did the individual mastodons that we're finding die? You know, and I think so far, you know, the mastodon we're excavating, we think it like, you know, it's probably, this is me, I'm not totally speculating, but just to give you a picture. Getting a little old, maybe it had some injury, it was sick, it was kind of just going through the side, the shore, got kind of stuck a little bit, couldn't get out, you know, sad end. But that individual mastodon may have died like that. But, you know, because obviously we are only finding a tiny, even though we're finding a lot of mastodons, there are a lot of mastodons that lived and died that we have no evidence of because it's just gone.
Have we ever found a mastodon with any kind of like human cutting into the bone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, there have been mastodons found with that kind of evidence on it, yeah.
Does like the difference in teeth between like the mastodon and the mammoth show different diets?
Oh, good question. Good question. Yeah, actually, let me go back to that because I should have said that earlier. Okay. So the difference is definitely thought to be the diet, where mammoths were creatures of tundras and grasses and sedges, and so they're eating, you know, plant foods that you just really need to grind up, you know, back and forth, while mastodons are in these kind of pine forests. And so the thought is that this is better for kind of breaking up twigs and branches. So it's thought, you know, the mammoths are grazers, mastodons are browsers. So mastodons are eating the stuff in the trees, mammoths are eating the stuff, more of the stuff on the ground, the grasses. Yes?
Since they seem to be located in clusters, does that indicate that, like elephants, they're herd animals, that they live as a group, like elephants, the female group?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, that's the usual. We think they lived in social groups, and then like some of the, I know that the mastodon that's on display at the New York State Museum shows evidence of like injury. It's a male mastodon, and it shows evidence of injury that those folks think is the result of male mastodons fighting when they kind of come into their version of heat. So that would be living in a, you know, probably a social group like elephants too, because elephants do the same thing.
The male can stay separate, but
yeah, but then they fight together. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that that's a pretty good model. You know, probably wasn't exactly the same, but a pretty good model for how their social structures were.
Cory,
Do we have a sense of the dig up on Scotchtown of the size of that particular mastodon based on the vertebrae find? Is it a juvenile? Is it older? Like
No, we think it's again probably an adult because of the teeth. This would have been the last tooth that emerged. So if it was a younger mastodon, that tooth probably wouldn't have pushed out yet. And that's another interesting thing, because you look at these teeth, these were the ones at the back. And the way that elephant teeth come in, they kind of get put, it's like a conveyor belt. They kind of come out and go forward. So these would have been the last ones to erupt. And you can see that they look pretty, they look less warm than these ones, which would have been the ones in front of that. So that mastodon had spent more time chewing with these ones, grinding them down, while these hadn't been subjected to as much chewing abrasion. Yeah.
Do you have any sense about the relationship or interaction of these animals with man at that time?
I mean, it's a classic question in archaeology of this time is how much were humans responsible for, killing them and maybe wiping them out? How much of it was climate change? So, yeah, I mean, it would have been, are you thinking just like, is your question about hunting?
Well, I mean, did they live in the same habitats?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, people and these animals did overlap for sure.
So they were
same
a
time.
food source.
They could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
Can you tell me why there's not more interest in excavating this Scotchtown site that was found, so that this is being done more expeditiously rather than you having to wait till you get 12 students again this summer?
I mean, I would say archaeology and paleontology do unfold slowly. And there's a few things, like the New York State Museum, their staff, even though they have more resources than I do at SUNY Orange to do preservation and analysis, it's still taking a long time. So even the material we've sent them is taking a long time to get back together. They are not in a rush for us to give them more, because then there's a lot of stuff sitting sitting there waiting to be dealt with. For the college, I'm a really firm believer that I want students to be involved in this project and to be continually involved in this project, but it's difficult to impossible to do this kind of project during your typical semester schedule, because students are taking, classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 50 minutes, Tuesday and Thursday for an hour, where you can't go out here for 50 minutes. It's got to be a whole day. And so you need to schedule it during times when a student can commit to the whole day, for several days. So that's a big part of it. And, we're learning something already. And so to me, there's ultimately no rush to get it done. I mean, we want more, but there's not a rush for it. Hold on, in the back.
No, I just also wanted to note that because you reburied it and it was buried for so long, it's not in any degradation jeopardy right now. They actually safeguarded what is in place as well as they could.
Yeah.
Whereas opposed to if this was in a bog or something, if you've taken all the water out to change the environment, that you want to get out as quickly as you can because you've changed the setting, it's going to degrade. But actually this is safeguarded right now, the way you left it. Honestly, nobody could go back, and unless somebody's going to take a bulldozer and do something back there, that's safe.
Yeah.
My concern was not that, I just couldn't understand why there weren't some national or international groups that would be interested in getting this done quickly to maybe put together another full mastodon.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it too is right now, those of us that are involved are wanting to prioritize student involvement.
Yeah, the home jurisdiction.
And which, again, and I'm totally partisan here, being a SUNY Orange faculty member, I think it's so great, because this is a incredibly unique opportunity for any college student. much less, a student at a 2-year community college. So I think it's a really important opportunity that I'm going to be committed to maintaining that.
So the property owners, they're just giving the remains to the State Museum?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not, maybe there's a certain amount of like, oh, it's just another mastodon. Because there are so many that have been excavated so far. And of course, it's not an issue like if people have read about Sue, the dinosaur, where there was a lot of money involved.
Yeah, no, the homeowners, just they made an agreement with the museum to donate it for the history, because, and that's another beautiful thing about it, is that ideally this stuff, even though, we're taking our time to get it out, once it's the museum, as long as our institution persists, hopefully in 100 years, somebody who's interested in this kind of thing will have access to this material still.
Yeah, cool.
As opposed to it being somebody's, because I don't know, you know how it goes, if it just ended up in somebody's garage, and then that person passes away, their kids are going through their stuff, what's this then? We gotta get done, let's get rid of it. Or at least if it's there, it's being taken care of.
The teeth, which seem to be a central part of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Is their composition the same as human?
Mm-hmm.
It
Roughly,
is?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. I'm looking for, I'll come, but you in the back.
You had a graph in the beginning, and it had over the millennia, ice ages, warming, ice ages, warming. We're kind of schooled in the fact that, it's going to get warmer and warmer, it's causing all sorts of situations. Could it be that there's another ice age?
Possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I heard one time, one of the ice ages was caused by a comet or something that smashed into the earth and caused clouds for years and years and years.
Yeah, there's a current debate because right after, I don't know if it shows on this graphic, it's kind of right around this axis doesn't give us enough resolution, but as we're coming out of the Pleistocene, into what today we call the Holocene, where things are getting warmer. There is this period where things get really cold really quick, and then they get warmer again. And that's referred to as the Younger Dryas. And that's roughly 12-ish thousand years ago. There's currently a lot of scholarly debate about what caused the Younger Dryas. One of the arguments is that a comet hit and kind of caused a nuclear winter sort of situation, that things got colder very fast. So that's the main one I'm familiar with about a potential comet impact shaping global environments like that. Then you go back, way, way earlier, and you talk about like extinction events, like the dinosaur extinction event. There, it's pretty well established of extraterrestrial body impacted the Earth and caused a massive, disruption. Is there?
All I was going to say, but my thought kind of just got destroyed by what you just said. I was thinking that I noticed on the photographs that the animal had very small ears, so it would have no way to cool its body weight.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Earth was getting warmer and warmer, maybe it just got too hot for them. But now you just said that it was cold, so
yeah,
it kills that idea.
Well, it's hard to fully decipher it at this point. Yeah.
Is there any major discernible difference between the mastodons found specifically in Orange County versus the rest of the state? Like how long ago they lived or how long they lived in their own lifespans? Something to describe why there's such a concentration of them here compared to elsewhere in the state.
Yeah, I don't know enough to address the direct question, but I think what it usually, from what I've gathered, the Orange County kind of prevalence is about, it was an attractive environment for mastodons at the time. There were a lot of places where preservation could occur. So it was maybe pretty likely for them to die and get preserved because of all these lake edges. And then you have the history of agricultural activity around Orange County. that creates the greater opportunity to discover. I mean, we're not completely unique in all of those factors either, but it does seem like that's a part of why Orange County is figured so prominently.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have the homeowners been tempted to go out and find excavations? I know I would. I was just wondering.
They a little, but I think they've really enjoyed being part of this team. You know, they are eager to see what more is out there. And that's one of the reasons we've got like a double class happening this summer to go back and do more, to try to have more opportunity to recover. But no, they're super eager. They're really interested. They want to know what it is, what more is out there. Okay.
Are students from other colleges trying to register for that course?
We might have some students potentially from other colleges this year, but we've been so far all SUNY Orange. But we've had many of the students from last summer have already transferred away, you know, and we got folks pursuing, you know, archaeology, geology at New Paltz, Hampshire, other places around. So we're sending them out. Sorry, you in the back again?
Yes, you had, are you familiar, there was a finding of a mastodon in the town of Mount Hope.
Okay.
And I think that mastodon was sent to the Peabody Museum in Massachusetts. Are you familiar with that at all?
Probably roughly. I mean, it's often difficult to parse all of the mastodons and where they ended up, because there's a lot of them. You know, Orange County mastodons are all over the place. Yeah.
Do we have both mastodons and mammoths in the United States? Or
In the United States, yeah. In New York, it's been mostly mastodons, but mammoths have been found. Mammoths seem to be a bit more common in the American West, and that may be, you know, again, different climates at the time, but there could be some, you know, more of the boreal forests over here, so we get more evidence of mastodons. More open spaces out there, more, you know, places, habitats that mammoths would have been, you know, attracted to.
Did they exist in the same time frame?
You know, I think at some places, but usually the thought is, you know, they did like different habitats for the most part, at least that's the current interpretations. But I do believe there's some, I'm trying to remember where this was. There's a site in New York, and I apologize, I'm not remembering the specifics, but they found evidence of mastodon and mammoth at the same site. And it wasn't necessarily clear the chronology of that, and they're still trying to work that through. Which that'd be a great evidence of, no, they were living in the same place in that particular spot.
So Mastodon was what, for argument's sake, it's 15,000 years ago, right?
A little later, but yeah.
How many years ago were the Tyrannosaurus Rex?
Oh, that's like, I mean, I don't know my dinosaur chronologies as well, but earlier than 65 million years ago. So a long, long time. Yeah, Bill.
I'm just curious, if the mastodons were strict herbivores, what do you think the tusks are for, evolution-wise?
I mean, similar to living elephants, because they're herbivores as well. So they like, you know, for fighting with one another.
Oh.
You know, and digging. They do dig with tusks. But that's kind of a major armament for males competing with one another. Well, thank you all. Thanks for coming out.